Hi, this is Mac of Mac's List. Find Your Dream Job is presented by Mac's List, an online community where you can find free resources for your job search, plus online courses and books that help you advance your career. My latest book is called Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. It's a reference guide for your career that covers all aspects of the job search, including expert advice in every chapter. You can get the first chapter for free by visiting maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Becky Thomas, and Jessica Black from the Mac's List team. This week, we're talking about what you need to know about applicant tracking systems. Automation is everywhere today, including in the hiring process. Many employers now use applicant tracking systems to review and rank resumes. It's essential for candidates to understand how these systems work, says James Hu, who's this week's guest expert. Later in the show, James and I talk about his best hacks for navigating these systems. Many job seekers treat the application process as a numbers game. The more places I apply, this thinking goes, the better my chances of getting interviews and offers. Ben has found an article in Fast Company by someone who put this idea into practice. In a moment, Ben tells us what the author learned. What's the difference between an informational interview and networking? That's our question of the week. It comes from listener Daniel Zimmerman of Eugene, Oregon. Becky shares her advice shortly. As always, let's first check in with the Mac's List team, and Ben is here because he's out there every week poking around the nooks and crannies of the internet looking for websites, books, and tools you can use in your job search and your career. So, Ben, what have you uncovered for listeners this week?
So, the robots are coming for all of our jobs, right, Mac?
I've heard that. It's a message we've heard in decades past as well.
So today I bring you the story of someone who's trying to make the robots work for him to find a job. And it's an interesting article I came across in Fast Company.
So the robots are our friends.
The robot is this guy's friend, or he's trying to make a robot that was his friend. So you mentioned this in the introduction. A lot of folks try to treat their job search like it's a numbers game, with the idea like if I can apply to 100 jobs, I might get 10 interviews. And if I can have 10 interviews, I might land one job. And so the secret to a job search is just like throw out as many applications as you can and something's going to stick, right? What I would call like the spaghetti on the wall model. Throw it all out there, see what sticks. And we know this is not a winning approach, right?
Well, it requires a lot of effort. Certainly people who do direct marketing deal in large numbers of messages and they get conversions, but if you're a job seeker, you're doing this all by yourself, aren't you? Yeah,
you're a one-man shop, and what I tell people is what you're really setting yourself up for is a whole lot of disappointment, right? Because we know, the most common result of a job application is saying no or hearing no. Either they don't get back to you or you're not the right candidate or whatever. And so if you turn it into a numbers game, you're setting yourself up for a situation where you're going to hear just a lot of no's. Well, this one guy put it to a test, and he decided he was going to build a robot that would automate the entire application process from the job seeker side. So his name was Robert Coombs, and basically what he did is he created a program that would search through the internet and find specific jobs that he was interested in based around some keywords. And then this system would go out and find the hiring manager's name, or what it thought would be the hiring manager's name. Then it would take his resume and cover letter and customize them around the job description and email the hiring manager with this customized resume and cover letter. And he created this program, and he ran it a couple times and refined it. One time he sent out 1,300 applications in less than 10 minutes. So he was just maximizing the numbers game here out the wazoo, more than any human being could ever do. Anyone want to guess what happened?
I'm guessing the results weren't particularly good.
Becky, do you want to?
I sort of get a sense that, like, if the bot was good enough and it was really customizing his cover letters and sending them to the right people, it probably had some good results.
That was my thinking too, that like if you could get a good enough bot that it could solve all your problems. Well, his experience was that the robot didn't work, right? So he sent out not at all. And he came up with some interesting findings here, right? So it's not just that the creating a volume of applications didn't work. He found out some really interesting things. So he found out like it doesn't even matter sometimes if he was sending a cover letter that said a robot generated this cover letter. Sometimes he got better results by something like that, very generic, than by a super customized cover letter and resume. Now, part of this could be like there's a certain kind of, this is interesting. I got a letter from a robot, right? This guy has created his own algorithm. That might be why he got a response. But I would guess a lot of the issues he had was that his algorithm wasn't refined enough, right? That he wasn't either finding the right hiring manager or it wasn't customizing the resume and the cover letter to the extent that maybe a human would be able to do it. And so I'm still leaving room for the future of robots here. Maybe the robots will be the solution, but right now it doesn't appear to be that way. So he's sent out thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. He was also able to track like who was actually clicking his application, looking, and he kept all this records. But basically he came around to the idea that the way ATS systems read cover letters, keywords are more important than specific language. But that at the end of the day, you need to have a cover letter and a resume that are customized around a human being rather than a robot, right? You need to get through that ATS, but just getting through the ATS is not enough because it has to be something a human actually wants to read and process. So after all this work he did, he basically turned it all off and reverted back to a networking model. And he said that has been much more successful for him than volume.
Oh. Well,
so he's proving our point for us, basically.
That's right.
Yeah, and I have to ask because the principles that he's applying here, identify the hiring manager, customize your cover letter and your resume, make it unique to the application, are things that we encourage our listeners to do. So what's the flaw here, Ben? Is it that the customization isn't good enough, that he's not finding the right managers?
Yeah, so I mean, it didn't go into great depths about the methodology of all the search queries he was running. I think in principle, like all the right things were being done here, right? Finding specific types of jobs that appeal to his needs, customizing resumes and cover letters, sending to specific people. My guess is that these things that we all know take a lot of time when you and I do it, one at a time. They're labor intensive. You really have to put a lot of thought into the kind of customization that at this point you can't just automate that. Like there's no computer that we have access to that is good enough right now to customize to the level that's equivalent to what we could do the slow old way. So again, in the future, maybe the robots will solve all of our problems. Well, I'm doing a little dance as I say that, but right now the robots aren't. And just carpet bombing the internet with your resume is not a solution either.
I guess what I got from this is that doing both is the key. So still customize your resume for each job, but also go out and make the connections that help you get your foot in the door better and more efficiently and more effectively. Is that the key?
Yeah, I think one of the nuanced lessons here was like to get through an ATS system, maybe like being super customized around certain keywords, which is all an ATS system is really looking for at the first level of screening. Like that's going to help you. But when it comes to eventually a human being gets involved and decides whether or not they want to speak to you about a job, like then you can't just have some like customized cover letter or keyword optimized cover letter. It has to like be built around human eyes and human interaction. And I think that's part of the value he's added here, like about that's why networking is important because like you basically have that human element to back up the keyword optimization that the computer provides.
Right.
Yeah.
So both.
Yeah, and to Jessica's point, I think I know from reading his blog post that James is going to tell us that automated or applicant tracking systems, you can't automate the hiring process. There are pieces of it, yes, they can be turned over to audit tracking systems, but human involvement is still crucial. And whether it comes in the form of writing custom cover letters and resumes or going out and actually talking to people at networking events. So we're going to hear more about that in a moment.
But Mac,
Yes.
in the future,
Yes.
maybe my algorithm could talk to the employer's algorithm, and they'll just figure out all the stuff ourselves, and me and the hiring manager can just kick back and relax in the Bahamas or something.
Well, in a world where Google has created an algorithm that does simultaneous language translations, maybe that is coming one day. But right now, it's the human involvement still makes a difference, as the article says, and as I think James will say as well. Well, thanks, Ben. And if you've got a suggestion for Ben, please write him, and we'd love to share your idea on the show. His address is ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to Becky Thomas and to hear from you, our listeners. Becky, what's in the mailbag this week?
This week, our question is coming in from Eugene, Oregon, from Daniel Zimmerman. He emailed and asked, it seems like informational interviews are the same as networking. Am I missing something? I think that it's a little bit tricky because informational interviews are a form of networking, but networking is sort of a big, huge umbrella that covers a lot of different tactics and sort of actions that you can take in your professional life. I know, like, when you think about networking, you think about, like, shaking hands and handing out business cards at, like, professional events. But networking is a lot larger than that. You're networking pretty much every time you talk about your career, whether you're talking to someone else about theirs or talking about yours, and whether you're in a professional setting or a casual setting. Anytime you're sort of attempting to learn and build professional relationships, that's networking. And informational interviews are a really powerful tool within networking. You do informational interviews to sort of expand your professional network, get your foot in the door at companies you're targeting in your job search. They help you learn about the job market. I would say, like, a simple definition of an informational interview is you as a job seeker or you as a professional trying to learn something new start to look at companies you might want to work for or people that you aspire to sort of follow the same career path. Start reaching out to people that you think could sort of help you achieve your goals, and asking them to meet you for an informational interview, 30 minutes or so. You can sort of, typically it's good to meet in person, so you schedule a meeting, sit down, talk about your career, usually have, like, some clear goals about what you want to talk about and what you want to get out of it, and sort of lay that out for the person that you are targeting for your informational interview. And then you just sit down and have a conversation. And usually at the end of it, you're like, who else should I talk to? And they give you a couple people that are sort of, like, up your alley in terms of what you talked about. Or they're like, oh, just stalk my LinkedIn and ask for an information, or, ask for a email introduction or something like that. And it just goes on from there. And they introduce you to people. You can ask them for informational interviews, and you were referred by this person that both of you now know. So it's just a great way to expand your professional network. I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think that the big distinction I would make here is, like, general networking, going to the happy hour mixer in your industry. That's like a mile wide and an inch deep, where you meet a lot of people. You make generally pretty kind of surface level connections. You meet a lot of folks, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the informational interview is the mile deep, inch wide, where you're really spending a significant amount of time. I mean, 20 to 30 minutes is a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. Really getting to know someone and really mining them for contacts, knowledge, references, all kind of stuff like that.
Yeah, and that one-on-one, no distractions of being, like, at an event with lots of noise and stuff. You're having a meeting with that person. So I think you have a much better opportunity to, like, dive deep and create a relationship, which is really the value that you're going to get in your career when you have those, more robust relationships than just, like, all the LinkedIn acquaintances that you have, So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was just going to say, I was reiterating kind of what everybody was saying about that the informational interviews are more of that interpersonal connection, the deeper conversations, the way to really talk about what you're hoping how to get to where you want to go. And that's again where you were saying, I think that's the crucial component of that, is being very focused, knowing what you want to get out of those conversations, because both are very beneficial. The networking, I think that's how you meet the people that you eventually have informational interviews with. So that part, I mean, I think they go hand in hand. You need both of those to be able to do it, but you need to know which one's which. You're not really going to have a 20-minute one-on-one conversation at a networking event, but you can make those connections to be able to set that up for later to help you out. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I love your description, Becky, of an informational interview is a meeting. It's a business meeting, and it has a purpose. And I think your emphasis on setting goals for that conversation and having specific calls to action at the end of the meeting is very, very good. And a lot of people, when they think about these conversations, they use phrases like pick your brain or go out for coffee. And the problem with that, and we've talked about this on earlier shows, is people don't know what you want from the conversation. They're worried it could go on for a long time. So often they might say no, but if you're clear about what you want, you're much more likely to get the appointment and get the results that you want from that conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Good. Well, thank you, Daniel, for asking that question. As you can tell, we've all got a lot of energy and enthusiasm about informational interviews. It's certainly one of my favorite topics. Terrific response, Becky. And if you've got a question for Becky, she would love to hear from you too. Send her an email. Her email address is becky@maxlist.org, or call the listener line. That's area code 716-JOB-TALK. Or post a message on our Facebook page for MaxList. If we use your question on the show, like Daniel, you'll get a free copy of Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. Now, we'll be back in a moment, and when we return, I'll chat with this week's guest expert, James Hu, about what you need to know about applicant tracking systems. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, James Hu. James Hu was a job seeker in late 2013 and experienced the pain of the resume black hole firsthand. He founded JobScan, an online tool that optimizes resumes to make the job search easier. Before JobScan, James co-founded an award-winning carpooling startup and worked as a product manager at Canva Games, Groupon, and Microsoft. He joins us today from Seattle, Washington. James, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Now, our topic this week is applicant tracking systems. Let's start with the basics, James. What is an applicant tracking system?
Yeah, an applicant tracking system is basically a CRM or basically a tool that helps recruiters manage candidates. So imagine you're a recruiter and you have a job opening, say at Microsoft or at Google, one of the top companies, or just any company, and you're getting applications, 50, 100 applications, and how do you manage that, right? It's before, software was around, it was all manual process. It's kind of a pain to manage. So the ATS helps companies and recruiters manage their candidates. It will help them through various parts of the hiring pipeline, from job postings to resume submission, to interview process, to onboarding. So it's a comprehensive tool to help recruiters recruit.
Now, you mentioned the acronym CRM. That stands for Customer Relations Management. Is that right? Or
right. It's just an analogy of people that understand how the CRM works. Yeah.
And I bring that up because I think many job seekers, when they think about applicant tracking systems, think it's a way of screening people out. It's not about managing applications, but reducing the number of applicants. What would you say to job seekers who have that idea in mind?
Yeah, the ATS, it's a comprehensive tool. The filtering part is just one module, one section, of the ATS. So imagine your email account. Imagine Gmail, right? It's very similar. You have a bunch of emails coming in. Imagine emails are candidates. right? Within the Gmail system, you can send, you can archive, you can set auto response, right? And you can set additional actions to it and folders, right? And you can search, right? So search is basically just one functionality of the system. So that's kind of a a misconception, and that's at the same time, search becomes kind of a feature that's not always being improved upon from a software builder's perspective.
So another perception I think candidates have of applicant tracking systems is it's a tool that's used by big employers, maybe large companies, public agencies. And if some candidates will say to me, well, if I'm applying for a small organization or a nonprofit job, I don't really need to worry about that. What would you say to those folks, James?
It's actually not exactly true, because there are many applicant tracking system companies out there now, at least 50 to 100 of them out there. And they're ones that target enterprises with thousands of people, right? And then there are other ones that target small and medium-sized businesses. Also, for example, Jazz and Greenhouse, and some of the newer ones, they target smaller businesses. And the big guys, like the big ATS like Isons and Taleo, they target Fortune 500 companies.
Well, let's talk about how applicant tracking systems work. You mentioned that recruiters or other HR or human resource managers use them to manage applications. But we talked a little bit about the review process. And how are people involved? I mean, should applicants worry about, say, a robot reading their resume and deciding if they're going to get an interview, or are there actual real people involved in these systems?
It's both. So again, the good analogy is, think of it as Google, right? Or think of it as Gmail. You want your email or your website to be found by the person who's searching for it, right? So the use case, what really happens is a recruiter, gets, say, 100 applications. The recruiter will log in to the ATS and they will review the applications, right? So if there's a lot of applications, if there's 100, they're not going to go through one after another, right? They will conduct searches. They will do a keyword search, usually called a Boolean search, where they'll type in a couple keywords. Sometimes it's a string of a long number of keywords. So, for example, they'll put in quote, finance, quote, and quote, say financial reporting or accounting, right? So they'll type in various keywords and see if anyone will match their keyword search term.
So applicant tracking systems let managers search for candidates by keywords. What's the best way, if someone is applying for a job with a company or organization that uses one of these systems, to rank high in those searches? How can people pop to the top of the list?
Right. So a very common misconception is, we're all very used to using Google, and Google is smart enough to tell the difference, or even recognize synonyms, right? You type in MBA, it also knows, that it is Masters of Business Administration. But the problem with ATS is that it's not as smart, right? It's very basic. It's definitely not as smart as Google. And, part of the reason is because the ATS is a comprehensive solution. So the builders of ATS are focused on building the entire solution instead of focusing on making search smarter. Therefore, the way to be found is you have to match the exact spelling of that keyword. So, if the recruiter is searching for analysis, for example, you have to make sure you do have the word analysis in there, in the resume. It does not know the difference between analyze, or the similarities between analyze and analysis. It does not even sometimes recognize plurals. So you have to make sure it's exactly the same as what you see in a job description.
So if I found a position I'm excited about, say on a job board, and I've gotten a copy of the position description, and I'm putting together my application, how do I, in my application materials, the cover letter, the resume, make sure I use or find the words that a recruiter or manager is going to search by? What are your best tips about how to do that, James?
Right. Yeah. The most obvious place is the job description itself, right? There's really no other information out there that you could try to guess what kind of keywords they might be looking for. I mean, there are some resources, I guess you can look up the website, right? But the most telling part is the job description. And you could always read through the whole job description yourself and try to figure out what skills and what keywords might matter to the recruiter most, right? It's kind of an educated guess. So yeah, that would be the place to look for.
What's striking as you talk is I'm reminded of advice I got way back in the early 1990s when I was applying for jobs with state government in Oregon, and I wasn't getting interviews, and someone encouraged me to do exactly what you're recommending, which is get the job posting, highlight the key words that you see repeated again and again, and make sure that in your resume and the state job application form, you parroted back those words, even if the text that you wrote wasn't elegant, because what I was told was somebody had highlighted keywords in a position description. Then they would look at candidates' application materials and look for those words, and they would highlight them. And the more matches you got, the higher your score, and the more likely you were to get an interview. All that was done manually, and what I'm hearing you say is that process hasn't changed that much in 20 plus years, but it's automated now.
Yes, it is a very manual process. So I had to do this myself when I was applying to jobs. I would read through every job description and I would highlight them myself in Word. Of course, you can print it out and use a real highlighter as well. But it would take a while, right? For each job description, you're like, okay, what are the top keywords? And how many times do I even have that keyword mentioned? So I have to look at my resume and try to figure out what's matching and what's not. So we built a tool for that that would help you through this process automatically in seconds.
So what are any other tips you have about finding those keywords as people are preparing their applications? What kind of research you recommend people do, apart from using tools?
I guess they can look at similar positions. So the large company that's hiring, say, account manager, you can maybe look at other account managers to see if there's similar skill sets that's been repeating across the company. So those might be the common important skills that this company values. But at the same time, each division and each team has its own requirements and its specific skill sets they want. So I would still try to focus on the job description in hand and use other resources as references.
Okay. And what are applicant tracking systems, many of them looking at more than our resumes? Are there, will a candidate's online accounts, for example, pop up?
So are you asking if they are also looking at the existing database for other candidates?
I'm thinking about candidates' online presence.
Okay.
Yeah. Do applicant tracking systems also extend their search beyond just the application materials and look at other content that might be available online about a candidate?
Yeah, applicant tracking systems, majority of them they don't really pull in data from other online presence, but they will. So for example, I think it was JobBite that would have a link in, for Google or Bing with your last name, with your name in it. So it provides a shortcut for recruiters to do a search in Google for this person.
Okay. Well, great. Well, any other hacks or tips you recommend our listeners keep in mind as they think about how to navigate applicant tracking systems?
Yeah, I would really recommend focus on matching the right hard skills, and because hard skills are what recruiters are looking for when they do a search, right? So, for example, technical writing, test cases, JavaScript, right, or any tools that you've used before. Any soft skills, you can really just leave those off, or just mention a couple of them, right? Don't stuff your resume with words like team player or problem solving or excellent communication skills. Like, these are just overused, and everyone has them. There's even some ATS that would count how many words you have in your resume. So the longer your resume is compared to the number of relevant keywords, the lower the score you will have. So it's pretty much kind of a noise frequency, a noise ratio that they calculate for the resume.
Okay, so be concise, use plain, simple language that matches actual hard skills, and avoid jargon that, particularly professional jargon that recruiters aren't looking for.
Yes, exactly. And make sure your job title matches as well. Job titles ideally will match exactly to the job you're applying to somewhere on your resume. If your recent experience is very similar to the job title that you're applying to, let's say, for example, if the position you're applying to is business development manager and your previous position was a sales manager, then yes, you could probably update that title to match the new position if it's similar enough. But if it's completely a new different industry or new position or career change, you can always add that job title into the summary statement or objective statement if you still have one, or the headline, and that would still catch when someone does a search on you.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you, James. Now, tell us what's coming up next for you and your teammates at JobScan.
Yeah, so we just launched the LinkedIn optimization feature, where we can actually scan your LinkedIn profile and compare your LinkedIn profile against not just one job, but multiple jobs of your choice. So imagine we're helping you figure out how to build a master LinkedIn profile for your dream jobs. So that's pretty new, and we're getting pretty good responses so far. We are also launching a coach plan, if there's any career counselors, career coaches listening, where you can actually help your clients use JobScan and kind of look at their stats. Have they been using it recently? How many jobs they're applying to? How many interviews they got? And even help them scan their reports, scan their resumes for them, and look at jobs for them. So that's something new.
Good. I know people can learn more about you and your teammates and your work at JobScan by visiting jobscan.com/promo/maxlist. And you've actually got a special offer for our listeners, don't you, James?
Yes. So it's actually jobscan.co/promo/maxlist. Yes. And we have a free plan and a premium plan. The free plan gives you 5 free scans to use for free. And if you use the promo code, it'll give you an additional 5 as a MaxList listener. The premium plan gives you unlimited scans. That's only if you find the service useful, then you're welcome to join our trial 1 month free before you have to pay.
Great. We'll be sure to include that URL in the show notes. James, thanks for joining us this week.
All right. Thanks, Mac.
And we're back in the MaxList studio. What were people's reactions to my conversation with James about applicant tracking systems?
It was really interesting to hear a little bit more about how the whole process works, because I've never been on the behind the scenes side of things. So it was kind of a good walkthrough to just kind of understand exactly what's happening when you put your resume or your experience into one of those things. I think we've all experienced that side of things of, typing it in and that that's what's going on, but to kind of get that whole rundown of the keyword optimization. And I liked how you mentioned it used to be done manually and now it's the same thing. It's just automated and electronic. So it was kind of interesting to see that it seems like this is a new thing, but it's been going on for, ages. It's not the process isn't new. It's just the technology's new.
Yeah, and the hacks that you can use to get through the process haven't changed.
Right.
But see, I also think it was super frustrating because like they've introduced this technology, or 20 years ago they introduced this technology for keyword scanning, but it's not smart at all, right? So like project manager does not equal project management.
Right.
And like, I wonder how many people missed out on an opportunity because the recruiter like misspelled something in their search query, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like the system, you have to be so literal about it. And I've even wondered, like, what if I just took the job description, copied it over into my cover letter, and then submitted it to an ATS? Like, would that somehow, like, ring up at the top of the heap? That's obviously, like, a hyperbole there, but it's just that we've created these systems that are not intuitive and not smart enough to do what we really want them to do.
Yeah, and it was frustrating for me, and I'm curious to hear what you think, Becky, but it was frustrating for me when he mentioned, like, just change your job title to be the job title that you're applying for, sales manager to development manager. I was like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, I share your frustration.
I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
You want to optimize it that way. And I liked, he mentioned putting it in your headline instead or your summary, and I agree with that. But changing your title in general, I don't agree with at all. But
yeah. I would say, I don't want to speak for James, but I'm not sure he would defend the system as the smartest or best approach. But I think what he's explaining for us is here's how it works, and here's how you can manage and get through that system.
Sure.
And so it is frustrating because the common term, and I think James uses this himself in his bio, is the black hole.
Right.
When you're responding to these job postings where there's a large volume of applications and the tracking systems are automated and you're trying to get through that. At least with James, he's giving us some insights into how it works and how you can navigate it.
And I thought it was really interesting to hear. I'm a little bit old school in that way of like, I don't know. I like having the human there to troubleshoot those types of things when you know what the person meant, or you can infer development manager is the same as sales manager type of thing, where you don't have to be so literal, I guess.
Where you have to spell a word in a certain way in order to make it through the gatekeepers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this discussion just makes me want to embrace networking first approaches so much more, because I don't ever want to go into this black hole ATS trying to copy and paste and figure out how many times they use the same keyword so I can put it in my resume.
Absolutely.
And try to customize everything towards that specific job that I have no way of knowing whether I'm ever going to hear back from it.
Right.
I would much rather talk to people and develop relationships and understand what it's really like to work for that company, and then see if I want to ever apply for a job there.
That's right.
And like then somebody, and it's just it just seems like pulling teeth.
I think
it's such a black hole is right.
I think one interesting thing to point out here is the history of the ATS was actually introduced to like make the hiring process more fair. That was like one of the arguments, was that networking stuff was inherently like who you know, good old boy networks, and then an ATS system would put everyone on an equal footing, and it would be more.
But all you're proving is whether or not you can copy and paste.
I know I'm
keywords.
not. Becky, I don't run an ATS company, but I mean that was the argument. It just has not been applied.
And I like that idea of the level playing field. I like that idea, but there's, like you said, Ben, there's so many ways that it can be misused, or not misused, but it's not intuitive. It doesn't function the way that it kind of is supposed to, and it functions the way it's supposed to, but also
it hasn't developed,
isn't optimized as well.
We need
at the same level that the rest of society has developed.
Right.
Like, we expect it to be smart, and it's not, you know?
We need better robots.
We do. It's full circle.
All right. Well, until we get that perfect algorithm, this is what we've got. So I think you have a choice to make. To your point, Becky, do you want to apply for a position with companies that use these systems? And so maybe you don't, and that's a choice. But if you are going to navigate these systems, I think James offers some good tips about how to do that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't want to stomp all over James' advice. I think it was really good and actionable for folks that are trying to navigate that system.
Yeah,
So,
agreed. Okay, well, there's a lot of energy around this question, and so I'm glad we were able to get these ideas out on the table. Well, thank you all, and thank you, our listeners, for downloading today's episode of Find Your Dream Job. And if you like what you hear, you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, we give you the key points of that week's show. We also include links to all the resources mentioned and provide a transcript of the full episode. Subscribe to the newsletter now, and we'll send you our new guide, the Top Career Podcasts of 2017. Discover all the podcasts that can help you find a great job and get the career you want. Get your free newsletter and podcast guide today. Go to maxlist.org/topcareerpodcasts2017. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Ryan Roden. He'll explain how you can build your personal brand online. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.